of those CEDOs and what their specific areas of focus are, provide CEDO job descriptions, provide a sample CEDO work plan, provide metrics, how do CEDOs measure their achievements, and number 6, identify possible CEDO presenters who could visit Bowen Island and present for the EDC. Okay, so this is, we refer to the comparative communities all the time, so this is, this list is based on that, so there's the list, I think there are 16, and then a population. I began by phoning, and it was taking a lot of time, so I created a basic email with questions. And so the yellow are the ones that have no full-time staff. So of the comparative communities, it's pretty much across the board that there's nobody who has that. Most of them, it's a regional, and Cheryl actually was supportive in some of this as well. So for example, Seychelles, the Sunshine Coast Regional Economic Development Organization is very supportive. It's mostly the CAO. So I did go to larger communities, including Port Alberni, West Van, and Prince George, just to get a sense of if I can't get any information about the role of a CDO from those smaller ones. You get it from the larger ones. So for example, Prince George, there are 4 positions: Manager of Economic Development, EDO, Workforce Development Officer, and Business Officer. So when I talked to Keenan about community economic development specifically, he sort of just said, well, we have these 4 positions, so those 4 positions fulfill the mandate of a kind of community approach. West Van, Stephen's been at it for a year, so he's just developing an economic development plan. I didn't actually speak to Port Alberni. Okay, so now as far as the job descriptions, I didn't really want to burden you with paper, but I have quite a few here, so I can put them on Revise. The Port Alberni Economic Development Manager, he just does a monthly report to council, so I can send a link to that, but here's just an example of one of his reports. Do you want all this paper?
Sure.
Want it?
Yeah,
Okay. And then here's Columbia Valley, again, it's the regional district, it's their it's a request for proposal, so that's going to be some kind of follow-up job description around for Columbia Valley. So there's a couple of the job description and the plan or there. So
Busy.
there's more, but I just don't want to print it. So then if you look at the end, so then consultants. So Factor 5 is Chris's connection, Eric Burton. And then SFU, Wes Regan, who I spoke to, who's very good at pouring Kool-Aids. This man just pours a big glass of Kool-Aid. I went in there with like, I can't even see how this is working, and I came out like, so I just said, I kept back to the metrics piece. I know, Jackie, I can work more on this. But I actually ended up kind of like raising my voice with him because it was just like, he kept telling me how to define metrics. And this was last night. So I just said, you know what? My job is not to define metrics, I just need an example of something. Well, every community is different. And I'm like, just give me an example of like a mill somewhere, like how, just so I can have a piece of paper out here for these guys. And finally I said, you need to come and talk to this committee. But he actually thinks there's someone more interesting than him, which is Brian Smith, who is the Sunshine Coast Regional District CEDO and co-founder of Persephone Brewery. And apparently works quite on the ground with different businesses in Gibson. So he would be someone to come talk to us. And, yeah, and if he's more interesting than Wes, then it'll be a fun time, I think, for sure. So it's incomplete, but that's just the work. And I got lots of places that Wes, he sent me, like, and I have huge documents of downtown East Side work plan.
Yeah.
So I can send you all those links. I
Yeah,
don't want to
so
overwhelm the situation.
that's great, thank you.
Okay.
And so part of this, so I need to ask more, but part of this is that there's also not just housed within municipalities, but like a lot of these municipalities have chambers of commerce, for example. So a lot of the ED stuff is actually outsourced in that sense to the Chamber of Commerce, which we don't have.
Halfway through, I started to realize that piece,
Right.
and it became one of my questions.
Right.
Do you have a Chamber of Commerce? And most of them do. In fact, I think it's Powell River has 2. I was like, what? Because it's historical. There's the small business community, and then there's the big business, and they're quite active, actually.
Right.
Yeah.
So a lot of the local economic stuff can happen, but there's a big variety of chambers of commerce and how they handle this kind of work as well. But you may find some CED work being embedded in there. And we know from the business licensing that a lot of those chambers of commerce are actually funded by the business licensing programs. Some of them are. So the money comes in from the muni, and the muni pays out to the Chamber of Commerce that keeps the local economy going, and that's how they do the planning and strategy work. So
The business licensing says no profit.
right.
So it would cost recovery. So would the CBO part of that salary be considered a cost?
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
If that person was involved in business licensing.
Right.
Chris, just on a top sort of level, it's, this looks like it's replacing a lot of what we do here.
What looks like it's
Like the functions of it would replace some of the EDC.
Yeah, so
Or is
that's,
it the work?
sorry, like Port Alberni, for example,
Oh.
there were a couple, they don't have an EDC, there are a couple that were disbanding their EDC. They're getting a staff role, and then it was sort of like an advisory committee to that staff member kind of model. And then no longer was in use, and so didn't exist anymore.
interesting.
Evolution.
Yeah.
Well, I can see that. I mean, in the sense that if you have a Chamber of Commerce and you have a service agreement with your Chamber of Commerce, and then you have staff, then it's sort of the overseeing role of EDC or the sort of higher level planning type work happen a lot at the Chamber of Commerce.
Well, I guess if you could identify what the function would be, maybe go back to some of these communities and see who handles that role, and whether it's, I don't know how many of these communities have Chamber of Commerces.
Yeah.
I think all of them. do.
Most have.
Yeah, like I said, it was
Yeah.
partway through I started asking,
Yeah.
but, because they kept coming up, so.
And it is worth saying that we are represented by the West Van Chamber of Commerce.
And should
We're
use
eligible
that more.
to join, and
Yeah.
their staff are at our service as
Yeah.
members.
Yeah.
I'd use it.
So the other issues, some of the other places in which this activity happens too is, for example, in the Columbia Basin Trust, in the Community Futures organizations, and yes, in the regional economic development organizations that are out there as well. So there are kind of like quasi-governmental bodies where community economic development planning happens. This preliminary survey, which I like, and these questions that are coming up, when we talked about this last month, the idea was, okay, why don't we learn more about this? So this is beginning the process. And what I would like to suggest is that we invite Brian, we can look at Brian, possibly Eric, but Brian is definitely closer, Eric's in Calgary, and or Wes, to come to our next meeting in December and give us kind of like a workshop on this stuff. So we could begin to ask these questions. Of where is this happening? How is it useful? What's community economic development strategy and planning doing for local communities that are out there? And how might that fit in your own goal? And we can start thinking about that kind of stuff. So that would be my suggestion.
So should we invite them all, or should we prioritize it, or how should we?
There's a cost to invite. There'd be a cost to inviting all of them as well, but it's definitely a travel cost for Eric coming from Alberta if he comes. He's willing to, and talk to him. We talked to Wes, and did you talk to Brian as well?
I didn't talk to Brian, like I said, Wes said, oh no, it shouldn't be me, it should be Brian, and I
Okay.
just assumed that he's fantastic.
Okay.
But Eric is happy to tell it in.
Yeah, he's also
So,
happy to come
yeah.
to Zoom in as well. So.
And Eric is from Factor 5. Can you tell me
What is
president and CEO of Factor 5?
That's a community economic development company, but he's also been an economic development officer in a small community as well, so he's got that kind of experience too.
Okay,
I'll
well,
send
maybe
his bio along.
we could,
Yep.
the two of them maybe, have Eric, maybe if it would work for him to Skype in or whatever, and then also Brian Smith, and invite him to come over, if he's available.
What's Brian Smith's position with the Sunshine Coast Regional District?
I want to say he's the Community Economic Development Officer.
For the regional district,
Yeah,
for the regional district economic development organization.
yes.
So they have a CEDO. Several years ago here, we actually talked about, it's interesting you talked about the idea of transitioning. Because a few years ago, we talked about the idea of maybe creating an economic development organization on Bowen. And sort of, that would be one evolution of the EDC. So the Sunshine Coast has one of those. Those are common around the province, which are kind of like I say, quasi-governmental organizations that actually allow you to do more than you can do underneath a municipality. You can actually raise money, you can use that funds for, you can go do some fundraising, you can use those funds for doing some interesting research, some of the kind of stuff that we were doing before, and also creating economic development plans and strategies for the municipality as well, or for the local regional area. So we had a presentation at one of our meetings, that joint one that I did with Lindsay a year and a half ago or so, where Dale Wilden came in and presented a little bit on community economic development organizations or EDOs as well. So it's kind of been on the simmer, and it really the question for us is, does this committee evolve? Do we evolve our economic development strategy beyond what we're doing now? And that's part of what's in the pillars for council. So I think it's not a place for us to make a decision now,
No.
but to continue to learn and think about the implications of what our evolution would be as a group, and what Bowen Island needs from a community economic development standpoint, from an economic development standpoint. Maybe we just need this committee to keep working and keep churning away. Maybe we need a little bit more. And I'm thinking, I'm kind of rolling in this pillar discussion, I'm just being mindful of time too. But I'm thinking, we have talked about like a more comprehensive strategy around community economic development to deal with issues like the affordability, the short-term rentals kinds of things, the depth of tourist experience, the connections between local businesses and local nonprofit organizations, which I sense are actually coming apart more than they were when I first moved here. There's like a separation between business and arts, business and nonprofit communities. And so it's like, what do we want to say about what our future should be? We don't have a plan. Do we need a plan? And if we do have a plan, we have to be careful to choose the right lenses for what a plan should be. So from my perspective, take these as questions we're raising to think about what our future might be, and there's a lot of moving bits and pieces in place. So.
I've got two questions. One, when I was speaking to Wes, I did point out that our 2014 Economic Development Action Plan, you guys have this in your binder, I printed those up as well, for inspiration. We did pay a consultant $5,000 to work on this, so I was saying to him, just as far as being staff in this building, do you have any solutions about having the CDO desire for one fulfilled without medical benefits and a desk?
Right.
And he did believe, yes, you can transition somebody, get the benefits and resources through a consultant type of position. So that was really my focus, was the staffing piece. And Wes thinks it's possible. He was a little reluctant, but he thinks that's possible. Other thing I just wanted to ask about the Chamber of Commerce. So it keeps coming up. So we lost the one on Bowen
How long ago?
4 years ago.
Yeah, 4 or 5.
No phone, run by, you were a part of it.
Yeah.
You used to be chair.
Yeah, I was the chair at
Yeah.
the time. It was a matter of the problem of having a part-time manager, which was necessary to carry out
Paid staff.
we needed some sort of paid staff.
Yeah.
And there was continual problems with maintaining that, the whole administrative part. And there was a lower, membership kept dwindling, so the funds were less. Now, we did have some agreement for service for running the tourism center down at by the ferry, what the Arts Council does now. So there just wasn't enough will among the business community to come out and populate the organization, is what it really comes down to. And the fees were low, lower
Right.
than the West Van Chamber, so.
So what are the possibilities of,
Creating a.
of working with West Van? So if that has happened, and that decision was made by the people whose boots were on the ground, and the West Van is now responsible for taking care of us. So we're part of that, so how come we're not using that?
Bridges and ferries, I don't know, they seem to
The
borders.
The 7 o'clock breakfast in West Van,
Yeah,
that's getting up at 5.
And I think too, it's true that there have been different groups that sort of sprung up after the chamber
Like the merchants?
went away,
Yeah.
like the bed and breakfast group and the business improvement.
The women in business.
The women in business group.
Yeah.
And so maybe in light of that, what could the chamber offer those groups? Well, maybe a central spot to come together. But really, it doesn't do, there wouldn't be enough rationale to have another overarching organization as well as those groups. Or at least enough time and dedication and budget to have another overarching group.
Right. So I wanna belabor the point, but I also wanna I want us to be able to move forward. So any other reaction to this kind of cluster of work that we're suggesting we're doing? What I'm struggling with is trying to find a way to give some directionality to it, because it seems amorphous, but it seems like maybe a workshop would help us to clarify, whether this is something we want to be able to do, something we don't want to be able to do. I can tell you with the strategic pillar pieces here, just from Maureen's timing on the planning, we don't need to finalize these today, so we can continue working on these, but this is a way to kind of capture, if we want to go ahead and actually do this, this gives us a mandate from council to be able to go ahead and do this at some level. So, any final thoughts on how we should?
I think we need outside of this meeting discussion about what we specifically want to ask a presenter for the CED.
Great.
Because it seems to me for instance, the Chamber of Commerce issue is one area. We want to know how they relate to them, what they see the benefit of, and so on and so forth. And that is an area that I definitely think needs more investigation. And to understand, whether that's, the EDC is better doing that. And then, EDC in one area or organization dissolves and then something else replaces it. Why has that happened? That would be another question. So anyway, the questions for these people that we could structure ahead of time so we can get the most value out of it.
Great. Any other thoughts from folks? As you're thinking through this?
I put some comments on the document, so I
Yeah.
don't know if we,
I haven't had a chance to do that yet, but I will do so. Just off the top, I don't see hiring a community economic development officer as a strategic priority on its own. It's something else. That's a tactic in support of a strategic priority that I think is at a higher level.
Okay.
And it's touched on in the supplement, but I'll go through it and get more
Great.
specific feedback.
And that's just one proposal. Jackie
Yeah.
added some comments around, I don't know if we need to have a whole staff person devoted to this, and whether we even need a plan at all altogether.
Community Futures, that's where Brian is associated with, Community
Yeah.
Futures,
Right,
right?
just-
And that model, which I am a little bit familiar with, is a fantastic model.
Mhm.
I mean, is that something that we want here?
Right.
Could we create that here?
Right.
What would that look like? I mean, I would love to explore that a little bit. I don't know if you're familiar with it, but it's just community-based economic development.
So we could send that around actually.
So, but why, so
Is that
community,
link? Send it to.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah.
Other
Yeah.
thoughts as we go forward?
Yeah, I really love the direction we're going in. I'm just not sure how we arrive or what the destination is. I'm quite unclear in my mind. And so just that need for education and exploration is foremost for me. Looking at opportunities. I mean, I suggest on the comments about micro financing loans, and they have been done by the municipalities before. I was at a conference in Portland a few years ago, but there was presenters from Canada from Nova Scotia. That was specifically aimed, so they were creating an opportunity for microfinancing through the municipality, but the mandate was to help with poverty and housing issues. So it was very, very specific, but it was a really great program that worked very well, and it was a good return on investment. So those were loans, and they were much small. They were 5,000 to 7,000. Anyway, so is that something that would work in our community? I don't know, but again, just to have an opportunity to explore those options and look at alternative approaches to the seed and the community economic development.
Mhm. Yeah, from time to time I send you guys information from the Orton Foundation.
Which is great,
I think
yeah,
which has done
I
a
appreciate
lot
it.
of work in this area too, and there are some incredible like community plans around those for communities like ours, small communities that are visited often, that have character to them, and they have a planning approach called Heart and Soul Planning, which is actually a rigorous set of planning tools that planners use in all like large cities all the way down to small villages across the U.S. and Canada. So it's just simply a question of like, there are actually different ways to do community planning, community development, economic development work that actually preserves some of what it is we love about the place. And so I'm kind of like, I've been trying to, it is like nebulous, trying to assemble these resources that are in line with what we know from our branding, about who we are and who we want to be, that respond to some of the ways in which that is being sheared, I think, by the way we are marketing our tourism, for example, by the kinds of affordability crisis that threaten the diversity and character of our community. So how do we get a handle on these kinds of issues? I'm not certain myself, I'm kind of feeling my way through. So I offer these opportunities so we can explore a little bit more. So if you want to, what I'll do is I'll work with you, Steph, and then we'll maybe talk to Brian, and if you have some questions that you guys want to think about in terms of around CED, you can look at the community features link and see some of the stuff they're doing on the Sunshine Coast.
So what's the relationship between the Sunshine Coast Regional Economic Development Organization and Community Futures?
This might be the same
I
thing.
think it's the same.
Yeah.
thing,
Okay.
I think that is their REDO.
Oh, okay.
So should we move forward on that and devote some time at our next meeting?
Yeah.
A good hour or hour and a half?
That would be great.
Okay, great. Good. And then we can make some decisions at that point. If you're excited about it, we can go ahead and do it. If not, it's like, okay. Well, let's go think.
So that time, to that time, December 15th, 9:30, we're going to stick, there was a discussion last week about making a different date for the presentation.
Oh, right.
But we're
We did
sticking
have
with
that.
the EDC schedule for that?
'Cause I think we talked about possibly inviting other people
Yeah,
to
we could
attend
definitely
that,
invite
so we
people like
could
it.
just have it at our regular time, but just put it out there to the
Okay.
community that that's
Keep it
what is
simple.
happening.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
you saw Shanna recently then?
Who?
Shanna.
Shannon?
Richmond?
Yeah.
No.
Okay, so,
No. 10 after 11, I know you guys gotta get a ferry. There's one piece of business we can defer most of the rest of it. Maureen, do you have anything you wanna talk about around short-term rentals?
I just wanted this on the agenda. It wasn't so much for
Okay.
discussion. So there are two pieces. The first is from our planner, Dan Martin, that explains the differences between the three categories, and then has a statement regarding short-term rentals in general. So it's just it's a background piece that will be important later on. And then the short-term rental guide from Richmond, I think, is interesting in terms of a public information piece around short-term rentals, but also just in terms of communicating licensing requirements. Who needs something, who doesn't need something. It's well done. And they talk about lodging, and there being no licenses required for lodging, which is a category that we don't have at all, and perhaps don't need. So just for info, there'll be more material, I think, that will be coming forward in future meetings.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Any outstanding business from this agenda or elsewhere that we need to talk about before we lose our quorum? There is information provided to you, about the BC Buy Local program. It kind of comes around every year or so. It's a bit late, I think, for us to make a decision on it for this year, but it's something we might want to look into consideration for next year.
I think there is some initiative locally and being undertaken around that at Christmas time. I know that Marie
Yeah.
Nays, I just saw a poster that she printed, and so I'm not really sure if she's following a particular program or just taking herself, or doing it on her own, but, yeah, it's about Buy on Bowen over the
Great.
holidays. So
And that's
there's
really a good
some
point.
activities
Yeah.
happening around that.
Local BC does a province-wide, like, big social media push and a big kind of piece around supporting local business, and that's really what they're asking, if we want to join in with that.
Right.
So there's lots of different ways we can do all of that. So maybe Marie, I will direct Marie to local BC.
And Denise Lawson, it's the two of them, and
Okay,
that's
great.
right, they've partnered.
Great. That's a typically Bowen Island response to these kinds of things. Somebody is already doing it, so just hook them up and see what happens. I'll have them have a look at it, I'll get in touch with them, or maybe you can connect me there, Jackie, and what we'll do is I'll connect them with local BC, and if they like what they see there and there's a need for the municipality, and they say, oh, we can see a partnership there, that would be great, otherwise, sure, that would be great.
Okay, sounds good.
Thank you. Anything else to discuss?
For my staff report, I was just going to state that the improved service delivery task force was not going to happen. And not because just lack of, we couldn't get any members. So I asked you guys, nobody wanted
Nope.
to.
That's right.
I have one, nobody applied for the committee. So the meeting's there, ready to roll.
That's funny.
Tell your friends.
So what we did in response, because we actually have some questions that we'd like feedback on,
Yeah.
is there's a survey that's in development that is dealing with three things. One is municipal services generally, so we've got the questions built in there. The second is emergency preparedness. We've done a lot of work on that in the past year, and just want some feedback on how prepared people are at the moment. And Jen McGowan's given input into that. And then the third is housing. And the Bowen Housing Network has given input into that. And we also have our updated assessment from BC Housing just came through. And we have census information that came through a little while back. So all of that material, there'll be a batch of housing related stuff and the draft survey on the November 27th council meeting.
Great.
That'll be a big meeting.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Good guys, thanks. I just want to let you know that I'm not going to run again or be chair next year, just to let you know. So it's, and my term ends in January, and I'm actually discerning whether I will extend it or not. So we need you guys to think about a chair. I'm not sure, John and I have been talking a little bit as well, so I'm not sure if he's going to continue or not, letting him see what he comes back from Hong Kong with. But I just want to kind of put it out there that we'll need to think about a new chair for the new year. So if any of you would like to step up and take this chair, that would be awesome. And we'll probably need to do, I think we're going to need to relook at our membership as well. So we've had, for example, Glenn hasn't made a single meeting this year, and I think probably long ago should have been replaced on the committee. Not that I don't love him, but he's up to his eyes in trying to build a massive enterprise in the Cove. But just to kind of like, there's probably going to be a couple of maybe a couple of openings. I'm not sure if anybody else's term ends. I don't think anybody else ends
I
in
can tell
January.
you that.
It's just me.
And then I want to do this privately, but then Michelle is
Yeah.
on.
So we'll just kind of do like a little, we'll have a look at the terms and stuff too, but we may need to do another call for folks that are interested in joining the EDC. So if you know of people that are interested in joining, there will probably be at least one vacancy in the new year. Huh?
It's
Yeah,
great
tell
to
your
have
friends.
friends. It's
Yeah,
great when
Like recruit, like you guys, I'm so happy with the people, that have come on. I'm really happy with you guys, and I feel like we've gone out and got like some really good people who have a very diverse and different kind of take on things, and yet are you know, and also you are willing to do the work too, because there's just like a huge amount of it. Which is one of the reasons I'm stepping off, because I'm just realizing, oh my God, the amount of work this is a busy job. Sharing, being on the EDC is a busy job, sharing is a busy job, and my business is just like not letting me have the bandwidth to do it, so.
You're on till February, by the way.
Right, so here's the.
And what was the question?
Is anybody else up?
Is anybody
Yeah,
else?
so Glenn's up, same as you,
Right,
and
So it was major turnover last January.
Yeah.
so-
yeah,
so,
so you and Glenn.
yeah, I think we'll just have to ask for a restatement of some of those other commitments. So I wanna give you notice that I'm gonna step down from chair, we'll have to see what John is gonna do as well. Like I said, he and I have been talking about it, but if, you know, we'll need someone to step in, obviously. So think about that, and that would be the way to start the new year, and then I'll be here for a couple of meetings, do the summit with Robin and others, and then we'll, wish you well, probably. So just to say. So let's take a motion to adjourn, so you guys can make your ferry, unless there's any other pressing business. Thank you for your time, thank you for all the work this year. And,
Thank you, Cheryl.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Thank you, Cheryl.
Thanks, Cheryl.
I'm still here, I haven't left, and thanks for letting me participate, it's been very informative.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Thank you very much.
very well.
thanks.
Okay, nice to meet you, Cheryl.
Is there a motion to adjourn? Anyone?
Adjourn.
All right, Rod, take it, and Robin. Thanks, guys, have a good weekend. Thank you, Steph.
This is very useful, to go with this.
It is very useful, scares the.
The cheese.
You're definitely aware.
Can you turn the recording off?
Oh, yeah.
Wait, send me an email. Are you gonna see the Mary?
No, there it is. We've got somebody.
Yeah, it's a few minutes, once I